Raleigh Museum for the 50th anniversary of hip hop. Are you guys excited? Yeah, 50 years. Awesome. We have a great program for you this morning, all day, and tonight. We put together this wonderful panel you'll hear more about in just a second. This afternoon, starting at noon, we have a street festival outside with breakdancers, graffiti artists, you name it. It's going to be wonderful. And tonight, I hope you're going to be joining me and many of those on the panel tonight at the Sneaker Ball at Union Station. It is going to be what we used to call back in the day, fly. Fly. It's going to be a great time, so I hope you'll join us. I'd like to thank the people who made this possible. We've worked for a long time to pull this day off, and it is a huge lift for the City of Raleigh Museum and our Friends group, the Friends of the City of Raleigh Museum, who owe a great deal of thanks for helping us put on this day. And for helping me organize this panel, Mike Williams is one of our board members, has done a great job to help us pull together these great panels. He's going to really educate us this morning about the history of hip-hop, what's going on today, and what the next 50 years are going to look like. So thank y'all for coming out this morning and being a part of it with us. And I want to introduce our moderator for this morning, Miriam Tolbert. She's a Raleigh native. She went to NC State. Any state grads in here? NC State grads? Yeah, it's a couple. No. So right now she works at K97.5 as an on-air personality, but she started at NC State's WKNC 88.1 radio, which really introduced me to a lot of music growing up in the Triangle. It was very influential for a lot of us growing up here. While she was there, she launched, in 2017, she launched Carolina Waves, which is an award-winning multi-branch platform dedicated to providing opportunities for local and independent artists to really help those folks get the start they need to break into the industry. Now, through her hard work, she landed a lot of partnerships with a lot of companies, including Leith Cars, Live Nation, Art of Cool Festival, Hopscotch, which we know a lot about downtown Raleigh, and the A3C Festival, and more. And so she's going to guide us through this conversation this morning as we really explore the foundations of hip-hop and its future. So thank you again. Miriam?
Thank you. Can we put our hands together for the City of Raleigh Museum and Ernest and Mike? And keep the claps going, celebrating 50 years of hip-hop. Yeah. So, like Ernest said, I am. That's my on-air moniker. He introduced me as my government, Miriam Talbert, but you guys can call me Mir. I'm going to be guiding and leading the panel for hip-hop now, past, present, and future. I have an incredible panel, and we're going to be discussing the origins of hip-hop altogether and also how it made its way down to North Carolina and what we can expect going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my panelists to my right first. We have Dasan Ahanu, a North Carolina-based cultural organizer, artist, and scholar. In conjunction with creative arts, his academic work focuses on critical writing, creative writing, hip-hop, and popular culture. The self-described introvert with a very public profession has always enjoyed challenges. More than blending culture and academia, he balances with practical possibilities. In this mindset, it's afforded him the opportunity to craft dreams into accolades, and he also has the most amazing sneaker and shoe collection. Put your hands together for Dasan Ahanu. All right, next to Dasan, we have Crystal Bodie Smith. She is the light of hope for CEOs, businesses, corporations, and individuals. Ms. Bodie Smith provides fresh content that is entertaining and on the leading edge. Her philosophy is to help others and reach their goals by utilizing passion, skills, and talent. She's been involved with all types of different things. She served as an entertainment project manager over high school reunions and 2 collegiate tailgate events. She is accredited for co-sponsoring events with the APW Inc., FanFest, Bembe, the First Women's Empowerment Raleigh, the Coca-Cola Roadshow for CIAA, Winston-Salem NC, and so much more. Please put your hands together for Ms. Crystal Bodie Smith. Right in the middle, we have Eternal, the MC from Cypher University. Born and raised in Clinton Hills, Brooklyn, New York, he knew he had a message to deliver to the world. He really began working on his craft while studying psychology at Shaw University, and his industry influences include both local and national hip-hop acts like Rakim, Jay-Z, Biggie, Mos Def, Jeezy, Skyzoo, and Kendrick Lamar. And he is one of the founders of Cypher University, one of the biggest movements that was founded on NC State's campus. So please put your hands together for Eternal the MC. Next to Eternal the MC, we have the legendary DJ Skills. His name ranks among some of the most influential and iconic DJs, and he's worked with so many prolific artists, including Jay-Z, Diddy, Mary J. Blige, New Edition, Dougie Fresh, the Hornets, and he understands the power of music and realizes it's not what you play, but how you play it. Whether playing classics in front of an intimate crowd or amplifying the energy in an arena of 50,000 people, DJ Skills is known to take you on a musical journey. And you can also hear him on a syndicated weekly show called Welcome to the Weekend, which we do play on Radio 1 on Foxy 107, 104. He is involved in the community with his Turning the Point organization, and his passion for the craft and community and experience makes him one of the top DJs in the world. Put your hands together for DJ Skills. And at the very end of our panel, this guy, if you are in North Carolina, you know who D.Y. Nasty is. He is the CEO of Hazardous Records and also the owner of Hot 979. He is the founder of Heal the Hood. He's a producer, a promoter. He is one of the most influential people in the entire Carolinas and was recently honored as being such. And he's also a new venue owner of Raleigh Outside. Please put your hands together for D.Y. Nasty. Okay. Show of hands. Anybody in here love hip hop? Anybody? Okay. I love it because that is what we're here to discuss and to celebrate on the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So, Crystal, I want to start with you because you are from New York and you making sure you rep it, okay? I see the hat. It's bedazzled. She want to make sure you know she's from New York, okay? So, can you kind of take us back to the origins of hip hop, the inception of hip hop in New York?
Well, good morning. Yes, I am representing. I felt like today was a good day to do that. You know, a lot of people don't particularly care about New Yorkers, but New York was a very integral part of hip-hop. It started like around in the 70s in the Bronx, New York, when a gentleman named Clive Campbell, which we all know as Kool Herc. The interesting thing about it was back then they used things like cereal boxes and spoons to make music and things like that, but what happened was Cindy needed some clothes to go back to school. So they threw a party for her. And how I know this is I happen to be married to someone from the Bronx that lived right on the same block. And he made sure I knew that when we started talking about hip-hop and the godfather of hip-hop. And Kool Herc's sister Cindy was in school with him. And she needed some clothes. They threw a party. It was 25 cents for the girls to go and 50 cents for the guys to go. And this party took place in a community room at 1520 Cedric Avenue, which now they call Hip Hop Boulevard. The mayor changed that to Hip Hop Boulevard. And that's where the first party really began. And it all started there for a party for someone, if you want to call it out of poverty or whatever, out of lack. But from there, hip-hop began.
From a back-to-school bash, hip-hop began 50 years ago.
In a community room where he DJ'd in the closet.
Wow. Exactly 50 years ago yesterday is when that all took place. So I kind of want to find out more about each of your personal journeys to discovering hip-hop. So, Dasan, I'm going to start with you. Can you share your personal journey on how you discovered hip-hop and the role that it's played in your life growing up in North Carolina?
Oh, man. So, I have to credit, it's sort of, my love for hip-hop sort of came out of circumstance. I had a young mother. My mom and pop were 16 and 17, high school sweethearts when they had me. And so I grew up with their music. And so as they were moving from funk and soul and R&B into hip-hop, I soaked that in, and she was the oldest of 5. So not only did I soak that in, I soaked in what all of the other younger siblings in the house were listening to. So I went on this journey as everybody's kind of moving through teenage years into adulthood of music, and I was, I didn't know anything else. Like, that was all I knew was this music. Of course, you know, a little sprinkle of gospel, because you know how it is, we in the South. So, you know, Big Mama was not going to let that all just take over the house. So being born in the 70s but growing up in the 80s, what's so special about that is that as hip-hop grew in popularity from, you know, when Curtis Blow breaks through, you got Sugar Hill, like when that happens, that trickle down we're experiencing in real time in my household. And so the thing that changed it for me, I was explaining to someone, I'm in middle school, and Licensed to Ill, Beastie Boys' Licensed to Ill, was the first time I had a conversation about music and hip hop and culture with folks who didn't look like me. It was because of that album. And then come to find out that there were folks that I never bothered to think about who we became friends because they were also listening to what I was listening to. But Beastie Boys was the gateway. And part of that was I didn't go to middle school with my neighborhood. That was the reason why it was so significant. I didn't go to middle school in my neighborhood because I was in the magnet program. So my mom sent me to a different school. So I wasn't with the homies, I wasn't with the people in my neighborhood, and I was around kids from North Raleigh, from other side of town, that I didn't feel connected to, and all those barriers got broken by hip-hop. And then from there, sports and things. So, like, that's my journey, was like hip-hop was the way that I was able to navigate the spaces I was in, even when I felt awkward, because we all were, like, in love with what was happening, regardless of what side of town we were on. And if you grew up in Raleigh, the difference between South Raleigh and North Raleigh was very distinct, especially during that time. Like, I grew up off of Pool Road. I'm a Worthdale kid, Raleigh North, Halifax Court. Like, between that and up Six Forks, it was a different world. And the only way that barrier got broke for me growing up was hip-hop.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. Now, I want to go to Eternal, the MC, because you're originally from New York, but you've made a name for yourself as an artist here in the Carolinas. So can you provide any insight on the migration of hip-hop coming to the South and North Carolina when it originally started in New York and how it's been able to really take over the world?
Well, yes, I was born and raised in New York, came out here in 2007, graduated Shaw University, and I was looking for the culture out here, and I realized as we talk about hip-hop migration, hip-hop was already out here in the South, if you ask me. But if we speak it technically, just hip-hop coming to the South, I would hear stories from my mentors like the Son and Cesar Comanche of the Justice League. They'll tell me how, they would have these message boards and they would get these records and they'll hear this music and they're like, man, this is dope. They'll talk about the Clue tapes that made it all the way down here to North Carolina, for example. And I'm like, yo, that's fire, because when I came out here, I'm going to keep it candid and honest. I had the New York ignorance that, we the dopest thing around. Ain't nothing else popping nowhere in the world. And then that was obliterated when I came out here and heard about the intelligence in your music and our music now, because I rep hard for Carolina as much as I rep for home in New York. But yes, when we talk about the migration of hip hop coming to North Carolina, you hear about the lyricism that New York holds our head on, and you hear about just the consciousness, speaking about something when you rapping that migrated here, and from there I feel like the South added the musical palette to the music, like actually playing those instruments and bringing the gospel and bringing the funk and bringing the soul into the music, having that bounce. You can organically feel the music and you can hear the bars. So I'm like, the South not only has something to say, a la the great Outkast, but they evolved the culture.
Absolutely. Now, D.Y. Nasty, you are a record label owner, you're a radio station owner, you're a venue owner, and you've been doing this for at minimum 20, 25 years. So a lot of the artists that have been able to make a name for themselves in the Carolinas have come up in the last 20 years. So can you speak to the evolution of hip hop as it relates to the Carolinas from when you first started and as to where we are now and, some of the artists that have made an impact on that?
I'm gonna start like this so when I started, when I was like 17, the game has definitely changed significantly. I remember, but let me point out one fact. With hip hop and the game being introduced in Raleigh, it was a record store out here that was very, very, very intricate to the gateway of hip hop, and that record store was called Mr. Freeze. You couldn't get hip hop out here if you ain't had that. Like he was the gatekeeper for everything. Like
Yes.
when artists wanted to drop off their mixtapes, even me when I was in high school trying to become a DJ, you know, he dissed me 10 times before he let me put my mixtape in there. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm just keeping it real with you. And, you know, through his record store, I got exposed to the independent artist community with these, like, you had some New York artists. We used to be jealous of y'all. You know, you used to come out here and take our shine, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, it used to be artists that come out here, they drop their music off in his store. Like it was the gateway to creating what has evolved now, you know, from the local showcases he used to do with the Ritz and the Dorton Arenas to like now where we're doing showcases all around the state, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it has evolved very, very, very intricately, you know what I'm saying? From the DJ battles to everything has just changed so much, man, from when it first started, you know what I'm saying? So, but even now, you know, with streaming and more platforms versus back then where you had to get on you got your, I don't know if y'all can remember this, but, you know, I'm an 80s baby when you had the cassette duplicator. I don't know if any of y'all remember that, you know what I'm saying? And you had to sit there and package up your cassettes and hit the clubs and pass out your stuff to everybody. To now, you just hit the email button and just go, you know what I'm saying? Or post your joint on Instagram or Facebook or Spotify. So the game has definitely changed a lot from then to now, you know?
Absolutely. Now, DJ skills. DJing is really the foundation of hip hop. It all started from that back to school party. And at the beginning and the inception of hip hop, the DJ was in the forefront. But now it seems like the DJ has taken a back seat to the MCs, and that's moved to the forefront. And so when do you feel like that transition happened, and do you feel like the DJ still has a huge impact in terms of the culture?
I answered the last question first. The DJ still has an impact on the culture. You can't erase that. We are the backbone. Like, we're the soul movers. Nothing moves in hip hop without the DJ. You know? So I can't recall really when the transition came of the MC moving to the forefront, but it had to probably be somewhere, I don't know, maybe I'm an 80s baby like DY. So from my knowledge, I would probably say the artists start moving more to the forefront probably around the late 80s going into the early 90s, if I can recall. But, you know, whenever you saw a hip-hop artist, you never saw that artist without the DJ. I don't care how big the artist was, maybe nowadays, and it's kind of coming back around full circle now, but you always wanted to know, he's dope, he can rap. But who is the fly DJ standing behind the artist? So at the end of the day, as a DJ, we always had our spotlight and we always had our, you know, our platform. But like, you know, now you have the Callus that's making albums, and that's just making it more prevalent of our position in hip hop.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to North Carolina and the impact that we see from the past, from the present, and then the future generation, Dasan, can you just take us on a little bit of a musical journey on some of the important artists that have come along the way to keep that legacy going? Some people that started it, that are here now, and then, you know, what we can kind of look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Freeze was already mentioned, and that's important because when you think about some of the key elements, you know, because so much of hip hop, I love to say, it was mom and pop, right? These first records were pressed by hand, cassette tape was passed, and so some of these early on signings were record store owners who knew the process and were able to put artists out, cousin, relative, community. Down here, you've got Freeze, who was like our Uncle Jam's Army on the West Coast, like that key person here. Greensboro, my brother, hip-hop scholar and hip-hop professor at A&T, talks about payroll records in Greensboro. Busy Boys and Ski Beats came out of that crew. Entice, you know, was able, like, out that movement that was happening. Mark Sparks, who produced Sunshine Anderson, like, there's this batch of folks from Greensboro who kind of had this thing going and had a mentorship there and kind of spread. Of course, Ski Beats, Jay-Z, Camp Low, you know. When you think about Yak Fu Front and the significance of what they were able to pull off and to see that happen and that movement happen, we've got folks like, I gotta mention, like, you know, it's so beautiful to see, to have been around to see things to see how this all popped off, because some of it I saw in real time. So you've got folks like Superstition. You got Superstition, Spectac. You got a movement. We had a syndicated hip hop show. Kazi Thomas had Hip Hop Nation out of Chapel Hill, like a syndicated hip hop show based in North Carolina. We had our own, like when you talk about like that video music box, we had our own shows, public access shows down here that highlighted artists that were going on. I gotta shout out Hazardous Records, because if y'all don't know the stranglehold that the artists had from Hazardous Records around here, then it was a time. Yeah. Like it was a time. You know, Big Delph, you had, and we're talking about, this is pre-Justice League, P. Batters, like these artists, Mother Nature, these artists that we saw making connections and buzzing, like significant moments like Apple Chill, like where you got to see local artists connect with artists who were traveling, you know, Bike Rally, if you know, you know. But like these moments where you saw these artists from here be able to prove their worth alongside your favorite artists. And then after that, your Justice Leagues, Extra Infinite, your Josie Moes, like it just continued. But like, when you think about that time period, there are those artists that were really moving, your P.D. Pablos. We can't ignore P.D. And then, of course, you know, there was a thing happening here of like artists of different orientations and identities also making them make. Like I got to shout out Clock the Vigor, because if you don't know, you saw the posters everywhere, and Clock had a movement, right? An openly, outwardly gay hip-hop artist who was dope and like had a movement around here. Like, so there was Dominion out of Greensboro. Like there were these movements that were happening even before everybody started even thought about Charlotte. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like for a long time, if you wanted to, if it was popping down here in Central North Carolina, like across the triangle, it was popping. Of course, we know Cole, Bomb Shelter, and that whole Fayetteville movement. There's some stuff that was happening in 252, but like here, there's a real rich legacy here and then in the Triad. So.
Absolutely. D.Y., you look like you got something that you want to add. He just reminiscing. He like, he right.
It's one thing I did want to add too. And like before Hot 97, before K97, everybody don't know, all the hip hop records in Raleigh was being broke on 88.1. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All the records, you know, they had to count down. Like if you, like back then, like in the 90s or 80s, if you got on 88.1, you was winning. You know what I'm saying? Like they broke mad records. Even I think Yak Fu Front even originated from 88.1, didn't they? Like right?
Yeah. And of course, in that vein, we also we got to shout out the Butter Team, because what they were able to do at Central's radio station before the format changed, North Carolina Central's radio station, and DJ Samps at Duke's radio station. So college radio was like where we went to find out what was going on and hear artists. So like that, it was there's a rich legacy of artists who kind of like knocked down doors and made noise down here.
Absolutely. Give it up for North Carolina hip hop, y'all.
Yeah.
Crystal?
You know, and we can't forget the promoters, people like your Tobys and the people out there, because a lot of these things, they put the word out. They're the one who put the flyers on the cars and got it out there for the shows and make sure those things happen. He worked a lot with Freeze and DVS and those guys like DJ Craze, so we have to make sure we remember. And you had outlets like the LP show. Larry Pickett had a show where a lot of the local artists came through and they gave them the avenues. So it was a collaboration with everybody working together.
That's what it takes. Collaboration is the absolute key. And speaking, piggybacking off of your point about how important the promoters have been, the DJs and promoters in North Carolina and of course across the world, it's so important because they're able to bridge the gap between Southern and Northern influences. And so I just wanted to ask DJ Skills and DY Nasty a little bit more about how the events and how important it is with the promoters to work together and coordinate to be able to push the culture forward, the DJs and the promoters.
So yeah, from my stance, so I'm originally from Florence, South Carolina. And, you know, I'm going to circle back to, like, when DY mentioned Mr. Freeze earlier. That was my way of knowing about Mr. Freeze. I'm all the way in Florence, South Carolina. So when I made the decision to go to St. Aug in 98, part of my decision was because I felt like Raleigh was like a baby New York. And it had its own culture that I wanted to be a part of. And I felt like I can go to New York, but I'll just fit in with everybody else and probably just get overlooked. But coming to Raleigh was just like, I don't know, it was just something different. It felt real homey. And I started DJing in 96. So when I came here, I already knew about Mr. Freeze. But I want to give this guy DY his flowers now. He don't know this because he went to St. Aug as well, too. But his labels, the logo, the hazardous sign, it stood out so much. Yo, I used to think they was like a Def Jam or somebody out here when I moved here. So, like, DY was really making his imprint, you know, from an independent label side as a youngin' when I first came here to Raleigh. So I just wanted to give him his flowers on that while we here. You know what I'm saying? But back to, you know, the importance of the promoters and the DJs, just bridging that gap. Like I said, when I first came here, was in 98. I was at St. Aug, and it was a lot of promoters in the game here in Raleigh. I mean, like you mentioned the Butter Team. Dex had Earthquake. Earthquake had the whole college scene sold up. You mentioned Toby. Toby had the game sold up on his end. You had your Adolphs, your Brian Dawsons. My guy, my partner, Eric Terry, but then it was Player Productions. Greg Dent, you know, the list goes on. And with that, it was the DJs played that role because each promoter had DJs that they built their brand with, and people followed that. And to me, that was like a true testament of the strength of and the importance of being a solid DJ. I didn't know a lot of DJs here until I started seeing the party scenes and noticing them because of the promoters that they were locked in with, like the DJ Assassins. We don't talk enough about him, but pretty much every major club that I knew about in Raleigh, Assassin was that guy in the booth. You know, outside of your DYs and your Cool Shees and the, you know, DVSs and the deluxe sound machines, you know, so the partnership between the promoters and the DJs really shaped the party scene from my stance, you know, here from the clubs, even all the way down to the campus parties. You know, the college history is so rich out here, you know, within Raleigh-Durham, from the PWIs and the HBCUs, but the merger and the partnership between the two is like, I don't know, it's like it wouldn't be one without both being combined.
He said, you said it all. Now, Crystal, how do you see the blend of the Southern culture elements with the urban North shaping the unique characteristics in hip-hop in North Carolina or the South in general? So being from New York, what elements have you kind of seen that have navigated and made their way down to North Carolina to help grow hip-hop?
Well, let me be clear about one thing. My family's from Raleigh. My roots are here, so I'm here to celebrate and definitely partake in what North Carolina has done. My family brought up right in Chavis Heights, okay? I was the only one that was born and raised in New York. Just so happened my dad went up there to be Harry Belafonte's assistant, and that's how he got up there, and so I wound up in New York City. But the South is where it's at because I saw the community get involved. It's about the community, too, because, it's, you know, like you said, with the freeze and the stores. But I saw us coming together because in New York, it's about the streets. It's about the block party. It's about the parks. It's about everything, you know, the lights and the tall buildings. But here, it's about the communities. It's about the people coming together. So I saw the community start to embrace the culture here. And that's what I love. The colleges got involved, you know. So here, that's what really gravitated to me, and that's where I got involved and started doing more things with the community, like your Brad Thompson, who just left here, and people like that, and bringing things to the parks and starting to help them to understand what hip-hop is and the culture. You know, the chains, you know, the Adidas and things like that, the whole culture, the positive things about it, because there's some positive that came out of it. It's a voice, there's stories. It's about the stories. You know, back in the day, the hip-hop was different. The lyrics were different, like the Sugar Hill Gang, the hip-hop, the hippie to the hippity, hip-hip stop. You know, what you hear now is a little bit more negative. So I just wish that we can take the old with the new, because I'm the 60s baby. You got the 80s baby. If we can take it all and educate and come together and bring back the positivity here and blend the South with the North, I think that's where we go.
Absolutely. Now, as hip-hop is celebrating turning 50, there have been so many important cultural moments, viral moments, and I just want to go down the line and find out, like when you think about hip-hop, whether it's a song that you heard on the radio or a video that you saw on BET or MTV, and y'all young folks don't know anything about videos on these stations, or a performance that you saw or a party that you went to, what moment stands out for you when it comes to hip-hop? Or even if it's the first time you realize that you love this culture. I'm going to start with Deshaun, and I want to go down the line. And just for me, when ODB was like, Wu-Tang Love the Kids on the Grammys, that's my moment that stands out. Yeah. Wu-Tang's for the kids.
You would start with me. Man, I will say significant moments. Wow. I'm gonna have to say Raucous, the Raucous Records movement. Like that was one of those things where all of the like off kilter, like all of the outcast kids, like we felt like we had our champions. But like that whole Raucous, that whole thing, even the logo, like that whole thing, much like was spoken with like that has this logo. There was so much about those Raucous Records moments that I think it stands out to me. Like that was a significant moment in the conversations I had around that, you know, were major.
For me, it was the Run DMC era, because, you know, I'm from, you know, Jamaica, Hollis, Queens. I used to hang out right there, Hollis Avenue, right there on the block. My best friend lived next door to Jason. So it was the Run DMC era with all of that, for me, that stood out.
So many, man. I was just going through my mental Rolodex. For me, like, I'm an 80s baby as well. Got my maturation in the 90s, growing up with the culture, immersed in the culture. The Biggie and Pac era, right? When I first heard Juicy, I'm telling you, it sounds cliche, but it was all the dream. I'm like, yo, when I heard Ready to Die, I was like, yo, I don't want to be like, you know, on no gangster tip, but I want to rap just like that. I want to be able to tell stories just like Biggie was doing. Same with Pac. He was a revolutionary. He is a legend. When I heard his music, I was thinking deeper. I was thinking about how I could better my community and my people. When I think locally, when I came out here back in 2007, them tally parties, man. I had to be in the building for them tally parties, and that's where I first saw J. Cole. Like, and that's how like the DJ DY Nasty and DJ Skills, the legend, was talking about like the college radio and the colleges was breaking artists, like. Breaking artists, just like you would get on. I met Mir. I've been coming out here trying to get on 88.1. I was like, yo, I gotta get in touch with me. I gotta get in touch with me. Look at me now, you know what I mean? So the Biggie and Pac era, that just opened my eyes and was like, yo, I'm gonna see if I can really do this. And I got a longer story with that, but I'll keep it short for now.
For me, I will piggyback off that and say the Biggie and Pac era, and probably just a little bit before then. I think my first real hip hop album, listening to it from beginning to end, was LL Cool J's "Mama Said Knock You Out" album. And my cousin Backwoods, rest in peace to him, he had a little Monte Carlo, and he would play Booming System. And I'm like, yo. And before then, I was already into hip hop, you know, but like hearing that song over and over again, and I finally convinced my mom to let me get the album. I kept playing Chill, LL Cool J, Chill, Eat 'em Up, L. I kept playing that on repeat like 10 times a day. Not Around the Way Girl, not Boom. I kept playing Eat 'em Up, L. And outside of that, the Youngsters, their first album that came out, a lot of y'all don't know who the Youngsters are. They from Philly. And I felt like they're my age. They're doing hip hop. I think this is what I really want to do. And what sealed the deal for me, going into the Biggie era in '94, Biggie, Nas, Keith Murray, and Mobb Deep did a concert in my city in Florence, South Carolina, December '94. And that was my first time ever seeing hip hop with my own 2 eyes. And from there, sneaking backstage, I did a lot of devious things then, but like being backstage and just seeing the culture, seeing the DJs live and in person. Doo-Wop was actually on that bill as well as a DJ. That kind of just like sealed the deal for me. And from there, '94, I was like, all right, what I need to do, what I need to purchase. So yeah, it was that, I'm gonna say '92 to '95-ish era that kind of sold it up for me.
For me, it's 2 different points. And I'm gonna talk about one locally, then I'm gonna talk about one from a hip hop in a general aspect. When hip hop really hit me, and I think it was, and I'm gonna go back to Mr. Freeze. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with like DJ battles when they had like the DMC battles and all that. When they still do it, but it's not as heavy as it is now, like it was back then. So Mr. Freeze had brought DJ Ron G. Like, I don't know if y'all remember with the mixtapes. He brought him to Raleigh to the Dorton Arena to host this DJ battle. You know, and I was 17 years old in the Dorton Arena. You know, I'm just watching, and you know what I'm saying, and Ron G hosting, and these other DJs, they doing all the DJing and scratching with their chins and all that, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, you know, I'm just mesmerized, yo, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay. And then it was what was the guy's name, man? I can't. He was a Queens rapper, no, MC Shan. Freeze had him there. And you know what I'm saying? And he started performing and stuff like that. And you know, I was just mesmerized by it. I like, okay, hip hop is here. So then on the Raleigh side, when I felt like hip hop hit Raleigh, and you know, I don't know how many of y'all can relate to this, but you know what I'm saying? It's like at the Ritz, I want to say it was like 94, 95, between 94 to 96, I can't remember the exact date. And they had a rap battle, and the whole rap battle in the streets, it was Halifax versus Wanna Turs, you know what I'm saying? So, and I remember this dude, 200, he came on stage rapping to the Bridge Is Over. I was like, oh, hell, it's here, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's the same thing with MC Shan versus KRS-One when they was battling. You know, hip-hop has always been a friendly record beef, you know, but when I saw that, when 200 came on stage rapping on the Bridge Is Over, dissing Wanna Terrorists, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's here, yo. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but that's it for me, though.
The ladies, though, I have to give props to Queen Latifah.
Oh, yes.
Queen Latifah. We got to mention the ladies now. We can't leave out the Salt and Peppers, MC Lights, because the ladies are doing their thing, too. So the ladies were very, very, very much a part of the hip-hop. So I want to make sure we shout out the ladies.
We definitely going to talk about the ladies. DY, were you finished? Are we done? Okay. So now, of course, we know North Carolina is very much a college state, okay? I mean, with the HBCUs and then, of course, the PWIs. So how has the college scene made an impact on hip-hop out here in North Carolina? Anybody can take that.
First off, I just want to say Falcon Pride.
Go Pat.
I got back up on the panel. I just want to say that real quick.
Oh, that's what we doing now.
It doesn't start
Start
you
being
personally.
biased a little bit.
We ain't gonna start no riot.
Saint Aug, we here, you know.
Falcon Pride.
You in the building.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But especially here in North Carolina, like the hip hop scene, the college scene shaped, I think, a lot of that. DY, and I think everybody on this panel probably can speak. Back then, like I said, when I came here, it was 98. During that time, that was, if you was a student in college, that was prime time for you to meet some of your biggest hip hop artists that you watched on TV. It was without a doubt. They may do radio interviews, but one thing for sure, they was coming through the college campus.
Yeah.
That was a fact. I don't care. They would hit St. Aug, then they hit Shaw, then they might go through the cafe at NC State, then they might chill the next day, go to the Central to catch the 1040 break, and then, you know, they might hit Chapel Hill, then they make their way on down to 85, hit A&T, then make their way down through Charlotte. So the college scene here, I always tell people in North Carolina, is like no other that I've ever seen in any other state. And it's probably because there's so many HBCUs and just college and universities alone within itself. But I think even for my career, the college scene shaped a lot, and it helped a lot of artists grow into being who they are. So I think like the college scene is up there when you say like the impact of hip hop music, like the college scene. But I don't think without the college scene, hip hop would be as big as it is in North Carolina because it plays such a major role with exposure.
And if I could speak on that, because that's how I got involved back in the early 90s, working with Sony and different records when we brought people like Big L and the 69 Boys and Biz Marquis and different people here working with record labels. Because back in the day, they were different. They had a budget where they would come out when they first began, you know, with the new artists, you know. But they don't do that anymore. Everything, and a lot of people have independent records now, and they on their own. But the colleges allowed us to bring these artists in to do the meet and greets. We even went to some of the high schools, brought in Inlo and stuff. But I have to go back to the parents. We have to get back to making sure the positivity is brought back because the schools don't let them do these parties like they did back in the day. They don't let us come back on the campuses now because times have changed. You have the guns and you have the violence and you have the negativity. So again, if we bring back the positivity, we can go back to entering these places and bring these artists back in. We can bring back DJ skills, and Nasty can use his connections, and we can bring the poetic, you know, because the poetry is a big part of it now too. So it's important that together with you guys, you know, instill that in the children, that, you know, let's get the positivity back because hip hop can be very educational. It can be very empowering. It can be, you know, a bridge to gap a lot of things. But it's got to be the positivity. The mindset has to change. If the mindset has to change.
If I can, I did want to speak on the influence college radio has, just colleges in general. You talk about artists then, now, and next. College is gargantuan when we're talking about breaking artists. They come to these college radio stations to meet with the program directors, the Mayor IMs of the world, the DYs of the world, the Skills of the world, and get their records played in front of people that are going to college to discover who they want to be in life, discover what kind of musical palette they have, all these things. So they're way more open to listen to new music. And that's where you have your chance right there to get on these radio stations, get your music in rotation, get a couple of shows. And I'm just talking from the indie artist perspective. That's what I am right now, just getting on these radio stations, and there's hundreds of them throughout the nation. A lot of artists still to today, I don't know why, but they think it's just one way to break through. And there's so many different ways. And if you study college radio, even from Wu-Tang Clan going on Stretch and Bobbito, for example, that was a college radio station getting broken. The whole skit, you know what I mean? It's like, yo, Wu-Tang again and again and again. That was from a college radio station, for example. So I still use college radio today to get my music discovered. And a tip of advice for any artist that's trying to break through, get on them college radio stations, go to them college campuses. It's easy to get booked for a show out there. Do pro bono shows, you know what I mean? Get your base that will support you and build your name up.
one of the things I want to also talk about is how colleges here have been such an incubator for talent. Like, because, when you think about, and just some quick examples, one, how especially the HBCUs were recruiting. I know so many folks who were here from up north because they came to school, especially when it came to Shaw and St. Aug. I met a lot of my folks who are from up top are tied to Shaw or St. Aug. And so that recruitment pattern, which existed for a long time, because I also came back to teach at St. Aug, and that recruitment pattern, it has existed for a long time. It just shifted to the Midwest. So it was all, and when you think about Great Migration, it was this wild kind of dynamic when you think about Black culture of bringing folks back home. And it was HBCUs bringing folks back home, you know what I'm saying? Bringing them back this way. So then you got the opportunity for Lords of the Underground to be at Shaw. When you think about Rhapsody, Cooley High was at NC State and they met. The Justice League is Central and State. When you think about even Luke Nasty, that's Winston-Salem State. This dynamic of these artists who are here and found their crew in college, right? And out of that, and then also found a base and their opportunity to kind of cut their chops on campus. And here, it's crazy how many folks are across the industry, even as touring musicians and DJs, you can see it, but what you see on this panel with Skills of DY, is not uncommon, especially for our HBCUs in North Carolina. There are a lot of folks in the industry doing big quality control. We can keep talking about the impact of folks who went to school here. Pretty V from Wildin' Out, St. Aug. We can do this for a while. In terms of the kinds of artists, Fonte, we can just keep doing this in terms of the kind of artists that come from the colleges here, whether they were born here or not. We all cut our teeth because we went to school here.
Absolutely.
Can I tell you one more story that has to do with impact? The thing that really touched me, when we bought the 69 Boys and they talked to these children in Enloe, and they were talking about staying in school, they listened to them, a little bit more than they listened to us. But there was a group of guys that we sat in the classroom, we talked, and then about a week later, I went through Chavis Heights and I went to the store. Excuse me. As I was entering the store, they were getting ready to rob the store. And, excuse me. The guys that were the guys that were getting ready to rob the store were the guys from the classroom. And when I stepped in there, they stopped. Because I looked at them. They were like, no, man, hold on. And I was like, you don't want to do this. And only because I brought those artists in and took the time out to have a conversation with them, they stopped and they listened. So if we do more things like that, that's the kind of impact we can have in the community, in the neighborhoods, when they see that we care. And so that's why I said we have to allow these things to happen again when we can go back in and reach these children, because it does make a difference. It really does. Because when they see we care enough, they'll listen to us and they'll stop the violence.
Absolutely. Now, as we celebrate 50 years honoring hip-hop and the legacy and the impact that it's had on the culture, I kind of want to hear from all of the panelists about how you feel that hip-hop has impacted the entire world, not just here in North Carolina, from a community or from a creative or from an artistic perspective. How has hip-hop made its impact on the entire world? And anybody can start.
Well, I'll say they impacted the fashion industry.
Absolutely. Fashion for sure.
For me, it's simple. It's just look around you. hip hop is everywhere. It connects so many people from so many different walks of life in so many different ways. So it's kind of hard to for me, to pinpoint one thing, because it's so many elements to hip hop that just draw different people, from all walks of life together. So, I mean, if you look around you, you will see the impact and the effect that hip hop just has on the world within itself.
I think it's very impactful around the world. It's like you can go to countries where they don't even speak English, but they know a hip hop record. You know what I'm saying? Or they dress in like the culture. You know what I'm saying? You got corporate businesses around the world using our music and using hip hop music in the background. It's everywhere now, man. It's infectious.
The one thing that I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of, because I feel like there's a lot of forces at work that want to take our understanding of this away. The one thing that's so beautiful about hip hop is that we've watched this 50-year period, and the culture as it was envisioned and as it is practiced has not changed. I don't care what you see happen commercially. Understand that right now, in a city in the United States, on the backside of France, in the middle of London, somewhere in South Africa, like the elements as they were originally envisioned and the intent of them as a counterculture, as a way of bringing community together, are being practiced, and in some of those places are ostracized or bastardized because they see the value in it. But like the culture has not changed, and it's not going to, because it was actually envisioned as a beautiful thing. Think about the foundation. There's a number of elements. Beatboxes, dead prayers introduce health and wellness. But like if you think about the foundational elements, this is the beautiful thing about it and why it's so pervasive and global. When you think about the DJ, that is our rhythm, our heartbeat. When you talk about traditional cultures, they involve instrumentation, and the drum is a significant part of it. And we can, there's a lot of conversations about the significance of the drum. But you're talking about the way you exist, right? When you talk about the MC, you're talking about voice, the way we understand communication, language. It is the way we're talking about the way you think about that. When you think about the visual artists, graffiti, we're talking about the way we see the world. Our interpretation and understanding, all the colors, beautiful pictures, a picture's worth 1,000 words, okay. B-boy, B-girls, you're talking about the body, like how we move, how we show up. And then you got the Universal Zulu Nation, peace Z's up, talking about knowledge, right? And so if you think about peace, love, unity, and having fun, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, when you think about what hip-hop gave us, it is comprehensive. It is all-encompassing, which is why it's so powerful when you use it in the community, why It's All Right became the anthem of uprisings when we resisted against police brutality, why, why these things, why self-destruction, why it was hip-hop that was at the heart of anti-apartheid, especially on college campuses in the United States, because it's one of the, this creation was very hella intentional, birthed out of a number of circumstances that we're still dealing with, but it's all-encompassing, because that's the brilliance when you bring black and brown people together and give them an opportunity to create something. And that's the thing I don't want us to ever forget, because that hasn't changed in 50 years. Regardless of how many people have found ways to make money and place it, and that foundation has not changed, and it won't, because there's nothing you can do with it because of the way that it was created, except pick from it. But you cannot change it, you cannot dismiss it, and you cannot get rid of it.
Yeah. And I think we need to remember the biggest thing also, to add to everything you just said, is it gave us a voice. Yep. Hip-hop gave the people a voice. Hip-hop gave those children a voice to express their feeling. Listen to the lyrics. They're speaking their heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, if I can add real quick, I'm loving this panel. I'm loving being here with a room full of hip-hop culture, man. Give it up for yourselves, man. When I look at the evolution of hip-hop, man, and just see how it's just spread throughout the world, I love watching how it's even evolving more, how these different cultures and traditions are adding to the culture. Like, for example, I'm watching a new way that B-boys and B-girls are breaking in Japan and South Korea. You know, I'm hearing different types of lyrics being put together and different sounds being incorporated into production in the Middle East and Lebanon and Afghanistan. I'm seeing ciphers breaking out in India. I got brothers in India hitting me up talking about, yo, let's get a cipher going virtually. We'll come out there. You could come out here. I'm like, the connectivity and the community is still there. And you might see it being exploited in the mainstream, but hip hop always been in the streets. So if you always want to get back to the culture, always go back home, always go back to the streets, the underground, to the community, you know?
Absolutely. Hip hop is a universal connector to us all. Now, speaking of hip hop and the evolution of hip hop, as you just stated, how does that evolution continue with today's artist? So, you know, it's a lot different than the inception of hip hop, the way that music circulates, the way that it's shared, the way that artists are able to make it in this day and age. So, looking ahead, how do you feel that hip hop will continue to maintain its authenticity, as Dasan was just speaking of, without losing what the overall purpose is? And does the younger generation have a responsibility to kind of carry on that tradition?
Well, I'd like to say something about that. You know, if you watch the BET Awards, when they gave Busta Rhymes his award, one of the things he said is that those that have been there before, those that were part of the history, it is very important that they come back and they educate the young generation on what this is all about. It's very important that they understand why hip-hop was created and what the message is, because we don't want to lose that. You know, we don't want people to disrespect the culture, you know, in being creative. They can be creative, but they just still need to be guided. So I think it's important that those that started it, those that have been in it in any role, from the DJ to the MC to the promoters to the record labels, I think it's very important that they continue to educate the up-and-coming artists about the history, even though we're going in a different direction and we want to respect their new creativity. It is important that they understand the origin.
Now, that's facts. You know, I mean, any profession, you would want to go in there and, you know, study. Like, if you was studying to be a chef, for example, you want to know different spices that work together with different foods, different palates, you know, way people eat in different regions. It's this common misconception and rap, which is like kind of put at the forefront of hip hop culture. Hip hop culture is not just rap. We all know that in here. I'm preaching to the choir. But if you want to step in the realm of being a hip hop artist, then you gotta study some things. You gotta study cadence. You gotta study delivery. You gotta study the knowledge, because that's the forefront pinnacle element of the culture. So you do have a responsibility as an artist if you're going to use your voice to represent yourself and represent this culture. I truly believe that. You gotta respect the DJ, because the DJ is the foundation of this whole thing. Without the DJ, you're not even gonna be heard. You see artists all the time trying to pass their music out to DJs, and DJs, like, you know, I don't want to go into a whole nother rabbit hole conundrum with how they get their music played and everything like that. But listen, you got to respect the DJ. You have a responsibility to not only be authentically yourself, because that's one of the foundations of hip hop culture. You got to be authentically yourself, but you also have to study the people that came before you, because if you don't know where you came from, you're not going to have a clear idea where you're going.
I'm gonna two things real quick. One, I'm gonna give flowers, because I believe in giving flowers to people when they have an opportunity. And I know, you know what I'm saying, I told him it was so good to see him, but like, once again, I don't want to be embarrassing, but we're gonna shout out DY one more time. One of the things that I believe, in answer to this question about young artists, and I love the way you stated that about respecting their creativity and where they're going, but also tying them to the history of this thing that they're a part of. We have to ground people in things. What we're up against is a world that is offering things that I don't have a problem with folks going after, but if they're not tethered or anchored to something, then they're getting pulled away from us. So when we look and we see what is that, What we're watching is someone who was pulled away from their understanding or any kind of discernment that says, yo, that ain't, nah, don't do that. Or any OGs, there's an at-large conversation about the place of the OG and like what that means, who can be like, actually, let me come through with you because that ain't right, right? And so we gotta, one thing that I see, especially because I teach, is there's way too many folks who would rather throw their hands up at the current state of things as if folks aren't going to keep creating and they're not going to keep getting offered opportunities. That's the wrong way to approach this thing. Like you're putting your head in the sand like this ain't going to keep going on. There's too much money at stake. It's a lot easier to actually get involved and share your concerns, but actually root these artists to communities and folks that they feel connected to and accountable to. And the reason why I brought up DY is because, like, you know what I'm saying? I remember, like, I got to, like, hang out with Ike and Shice, and I know that, like, a lot of the artists that DY was signing, being involved with Hazardous, like, you know, we ain't got to get to it, but, like, help them stay straight. Like, that idea of having someone like a DY say, no, you don't. Like, come over here. At least let me keep you in the studio, right? I've seen Skaz, and I've seen folks do that where I'll be in the studio where, like, folks is either in the studio or, you know, like, it can be different. And there's so many artists, and now that we have this podcast industry, we hear so many artists talking about who those people were. Jay was, like, unfortunately to his demise, Jay was one of those folks who, like, because of their interest in making sure folks were connected to something, like, gave folks a home. And so that's the thing I want to say about these artists. We can't judge them and leave them to their own devices. When we know good and well that the forces that are on the other side of the negotiation table have a whole understanding of what's going on that those artists do not. Like, they need to be rooted in something. One thing I love about Dead Prez, but they come out of a different kind of culture, a social justice, a nationalist, militant like culture, is that you'll see them even tour with their elders. Like there's an expectation that as you move, you're like we're watching you and you're accountable, right? It like that environment comes with that, but we can replicate that regardless of what the background is. But you got to be tied. Like my students, if my students aren't tied to anything, then the world is their oyster with no understanding of what that comes with, and that's not the way this is going to work.
All right, we're going to be wrapping up shortly, but I did want to know if there were any questions that the audience has for any of our panelists up here. And I think we have a mic. We have, yep. Yeah, we'll go right here and then right in the front.
Hello, this has been very educational for me because I think I checked out at 25 in New York City when y'all were just getting started. But the question I have is the background, the music you pulled from, the artists that you pulled from and their beats and music. They were mostly from the South, weren't they?
Yeah, a lot of them. For me personally, Miles Davis. I was a jazz head before I got immersed in hip hop. So trumpeters, I play the trumpet still to this day. Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Michael Jackson, of course, James Brown, Godfather, soul, hip hop. The list goes on and on. Like, I had a lot of musical influences. I thank my parents for that. You know, they didn't just play hip hop. I mean, it was a time where there wasn't hip hop music, right? So they was playing the jazz, the funk, the soul, the gospel. And that just opened my palette to musicality within the hip hop music. So those samples I'll be recognizing, like, oh, I heard this before, or I heard that before. I'm like, oh, this is dope. We can rap over this? All right, let me try that.
All right. I think we have a question right here. Well, two questions up here.
Yeah, I was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out. I was looking for the graffiti artists that they had from back in the days, because they artwork that they used to do on the trains, like it was like better than any artwork in the world to me as growing up as a kid. And I'm looking for that the genuineness of art, like how they used to draw in graffiti on the train, and I can't find them. I was researching. Like, I'm just trying to figure out where they at, you know, because that work was like, to me, was the best thing in the world. Like, the images, the things they used to draw was statements, you know, when you was a kid, you growing up and, you know, wherever you was at, and it was like, yo, yeah, I'm a king, you know? It made you feel like you was a king. Just the statements, the way they used to draw on the trains, but I can't find them no more. Like, they art should be around somewhere where you can see a graffiti piece that's saying something. Like, you know, the stuff I see now is trash. And I'm like, where's all the artwork that I used to see growing up as a kid? Like, where's it at? And where are they at?
One of the things about that is one of those other interesting things I was talking about, the picking off. A lot of those artists got pulled into the world of high art. Yeah, we don't think about it, but that's really what happened. They were discovered, and you got these kids from the hood that were taken around the world because a certain group of folks got fascinated with this art. So honestly, to answer your question, a lot of that art is sitting in the houses of some extremely rich people around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. And we only have access because it's captured in pictures and photographs and books and in a library. But in terms of like that actual artwork, now there are some artists who are still like have come back to teach and have their own studios and galleries and things across the country. But in terms of like all of that art, they're in the houses of extremely rich people because especially once all the documentarians started coming, especially from the UK, like. Most of the stuff captured by hip-hop, the BBC owns. Because folks were coming over from the UK with the cameras and coming through the document. And what that did was the art world fell in love. And they came and started snatching graffiti artists early. So a lot of that artwork, not in museums, and some of them get donated back because that's the nature of philanthropy and wealth. But most of it is sitting in rich people's houses.
We up right up here.
I think that the fact remains that when we look at this tradition, I'm hearing about DJs and all, but you know me, Dasan, as a old school OG of poetry and performance, that the lyricism is an essential element in all of this. There's a book, The Hip Hop Tree, which many of the writers in that book, Reverend Paul Scott, myself, and others. And there's an essay that I wrote, The Oral Tradition of the Sistren, which brings me to the specific question. I'm very much interested in the women here in this region in North Carolina. If you could speak to when they were spitting on the mics, those moments that you can recall seeing, hearing, or even their product. Of course, we hear Rhapsody now, but who were those women previous to her and leading up to her? If any of the panelists could speak specifically to the women of hip-hop here in North Carolina.
I personally remember one that just really stands out before Rhapsody was Shelly B. She, and I don't know what happened, but like to me, like she was Remy Ma before Remy Ma became who she was. Here, in this area, you couldn't go nowhere in North Carolina during that time, late 90s, early 2000s, without knowing who Shelly B was or without hearing her name. Her name was everywhere. So that's one person I know for sure. Her name like really rung bells. I think she's still around. I don't know what she's doing, but Shelly B was one of those female hip hop artists.
You got Shells, of course, Mother Nature, who was like, if anybody's familiar with like Medusa from the West Coast, who was like one of the folks out of Project Blowed, which is Freestyle Fellowship, AC Leon, that whole movement. Mother Nature was on that tip. So it was like Shells was Remy Ma, and then like Mother Nature with the locks and the whole, like that was, but spitting. 18-wheeler, I got to lift up 18-wheeler. Like, oh my God, there was a whole movement and they were led by this group. It was a duo. 18-wheeler, like, would tear down stages. So of course we mentioned Entice, who used to get busy. Like, these are some of the artists that I remember seeing in person and see like really, really like, oh my God. Like, so that's one of those things. I'm glad you asked the question because there are, yeah, man, like there are, you used to see it, Mike Mundy's at the local 506, you would see folks come from South Carolina all the way to Fayetteville, and there was never not any women in these scenes. Like there was not, I've never, in my entire time being around hip hop, there's never been a moment where there's not at least one woman MC in the building. Right? I just want to say that, like, that's the truth of it, even now. You know what I'm saying? Like Miriam can tell you who comes through Carolina Ways. I've never been in a space where there hasn't been. And we're seeing an increase in producers as well. I mean, we're like, there's even the Queen Cypher. Like they've had 3 ciphers. Yeah. You can go on YouTube and look up Queen Cypher. And these are like North Carolina-based MCs from East all the way over. They've done ciphers of these MCs, and they're crazy. The ciphers are crazy, and I think they've done like 3 of them joints now. So like, it's there, and it's always been there, and you can definitely go find it. So definitely go to YouTube, look up the Queen Cypher.
Yeah, and if you ever get with Mr. Freeze, he could tell you, because him and Toby, they used to have a lot of the females, and I think before this year's out, they're going to be doing something so you hear more, because they're going to make sure we definitely do highlight some of the people from this area that have made a difference in hip-hop.
Absolutely, and some of the newer ones in North Carolina that have been making an impact, Tesh, Lena Jackson, Alicia Marie, Venomous, Exhale TAOP, just to name a few. So the females are definitely bringing it. You had a question?
Hello, my name is Swan, like the bird. I'm a singer, North Carolina born, Memphis raised, born in 78. This is my life and all that has influenced me, hip hop. Because I'm a songwriter, everything was about this storytelling of songs for me, and I'm still a storyteller today. And there are lines in hip hop music that have blown my mind and changed my life forever. Just one line here or there. And I'm curious to know what those lines are for you. Like for me, BDP saying, "Now there's steak with the beans and rice," was really impactful for me because he was telling the story of being a drug dealer, but you felt so empathetic toward that because he's explaining that now he can put steak on the plate with beans and rice. And hearing Tupac lift us up and keep your head up and talking about how, you know, women have the authority over their bodies and how can men make those. He was just so much storytelling, and that storytelling allowed for me to live empathetically as a human, to understand other people's lifestyles because of the lines that are in hip hop music. And so I really want to know, what are those 1 or 2 liners in different songs coming up over the time that stuck with you forever?
I know that's tough because for me, it's gonna be whole verses. Like I'm going verse. Like I kind of want to try something with y'all right now. I think I'm gonna be able to follow real easily. I hinted on it earlier. We gonna give it a shot because me and Deshaun was talking earlier about breaking the monotony, right? All right, so let's try this. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine, Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. See, that's one for me. Another one, Mos Def broke down in a song called Hip Hop, what hip hop was to him, and he just started naming all these things. He was like, it's a Class C felony facing the death penalty. Oh man, like he just went all through the song about what hip hop is. Nas, and I could just go album for album about these stories and what's going on in the streets. Like Tupac, like you said, keep your head up, blacker the berry, sweeter the juice, darker the flesh, deeper the roots, like breaking down sciences, like Triumph, like I stayed in the house, it's like DJ Skills was talking about learning the whole Chill song. Yeah. I learned the whole Triumph song. And that joint is like 9 minutes. Like I stayed in the house and learned that joint so I could go to the school and be like, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like that for me. So Swan, I definitely feel you when it comes to the lyrics, capturing moments in time for you, when you can always trace back to that and always has a connection to your heart. I definitely know where you're coming from with that.
I feel the city breathing, chest heaving, respiration, like that song and that huge influence on my work, my personal artistic work. But like, yeah, that respiration, Black Star, and Common, yeah.
For me, it was Sugar Hill Gang. Like I said earlier, the hip-hop, the hippie to the hippie, the hip-hop, you don't stop, the rocker to the bang-bang boogie, the up-jump, the boogie, the rhythm, the biggity beat. They, what you hear, not a test, I'm a rapping to the beat. They, listen, see, everybody knows.
Go try to move your feet.
That's it.
And I like to say hello.
To the red, to the right, the black and the white, the purple and yellow.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Rockin' to the boogie.
He started off, but mine is pretty simple. It's also like a motivational line. It's real simple. Everybody in hip hop know it. It's I'm blowing up like you thought I would. Call the crib, same number, same hood.
It's all good.
And if you don't know,
Now you
Oh, I don't really have. I mean, I love every verse, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have our last question.
Last question.
All right, I'm going to start with the audience so I can get it back to the panel. So can we, generally speaking, can we agree that in 2023 in America, we got a few issues, right? Just generally speaking. So to the panel, as bad as the country is now, how much worse would it be without hip-hop as an outlet and an expression?
Ooh.
Oh, now you really talking that talk.
Wow.
Let's get into it.
I think we would be a lot worse off because people already suppress things. And if they didn't have hip hop, those out in the street, those youngsters that are coming from single family homes and being deprived, we would really be in trouble. We would be in more trouble. That's why it's important that we don't forget where we came from and we go back and we help the next person and we don't look down unless we're trying to pull them up, because there's people going through some things. There's some stories being told in those hip hop songs.
I mean, you think about it. You got the gang truce, the death of Black Benji. You've got benign neglect and slumlords burning buildings, joblessness, which is out of the conditions that it got birthed out of. At the same time that you're coming out of, we lost Martin, Medgar, and Malcolm. You're going into the Black Power movement. You come out of that, you've got the 80s, Reaganism, crack, Buppyism. You come out of that, you get it. You got anti-apartheid. You got the 90s. We got recessions. We've got, like, if you think about what hip hop has got us through, then you can understand what it would be like. And especially if you listen to Chuck and he talks about it being the ghetto scene. Like, just think about these trickle down economics. Like, you think about these things and the impact, welfare queens, tough on crime, which everybody, three strikes. Like, when you think about the stuff that we have had to deal with in the 50 years, then you can understand what it might be like if we did. Because they done threw everything in the kitchen sink at us. And we know it, not only because we watched it and we seen it, because there's a soundtrack to it. Right? Like, there is a soundtrack that's not going anywhere. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're actively at this thing where they're doing this CRT thing. and we're fighting for our ability to tell our own story. But what I do also know is that there's also a soundtrack. Right. And we can access it at any moment in time that will tell us exactly what they were trying to do to us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we would, self-destruct, like individually and collectively. Like, think about suicide rates, that's going up because they don't have an outlet to speak, through this medium of hip-hop. I run a hip-hop organization, and we throw a bunch of ciphers weekly. And I've literally had people come up to me and it's like, yo, thank you for this. I really thought about offering myself, but I think I'll come back here and say what I got to say and get it off my chest. Like, stuff like that just makes me so proud to be a part of hip-hop culture, be a steward of it, be an advocate for it. We might have just pushed the button, we might be broker, you know what I'm saying? Like, all the hip-hop songs nowadays about financial literacy and getting your bread up and keeping it, that's important, because we know about the wealth gap. We know about that. When I said push the button, it might be more war, it might be civil war. If we can't express it verbally, we might express it physically. We don't have somebody taking us off the ledge, knowing the ledge, and we might just go out there and do something that we might regret for the rest of our lives or something that might eventually take our life. So hip-hop has pulled us off the ledge and has helped us to think about different scenarios and think about a better way of living and being that saved so many lives.
You just said it. You just said it. It summed it up.
Yeah,
and I have to say it's therapy, if I can.
Go ahead.
It's
go ahead.
therapy. It's therapy from the standpoint of the DJs. It's therapy for us on that dance floor.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
That's therapy. The movement is therapy for sure.
To be able to express and have that release and have that outlet and have people who identify and have that voice that speaks for you as well. What are you about to say, Dasan?
Two quick things. One, Flower. You're also looking at someone who has positioned herself in a place of being able to kind of like provide an outlet, but also provide a haven. If you go to any of the Carolina Waves events, you see it's not just folks there looking to get on stage, but there are folks there looking to find community, which is what hip-hop is. And so the other piece of this is there are a lot of folks who found themselves, found kinship, and found friendship, found affirmation because of hip-hop. And that goes back, and the reason why I thought about it was the point that was made, because, Skills talking about the DJ's never going anywhere. As long as a DJ is somewhere, we're going to go there because we know that's where we can go find our people.
Right.
And if you know the DJ and you know how they get down, then you know specifically it's your people when you walk in the building.
Absolutely.
Because you know who's because wherever we are, anywhere, if we feel out of place, what we can look for is look for a DJ. Like there's certain markers that the culture gives us that if we see it, we can assume that we can find our people there. Right? No matter where we are. Like if you were looking, we see a flyer or we ask around, like there's certain things that we know, like if we mention it, it's like if you can tell me where that at, then I know I can find my people there. And if I find my people, I'm good.
Right.
Absolutely. So I think that's our time. Can we give it up for this incredible panel, please? D.Y. Nasty, DJ Skills, Eternal the MC, Crystal Bodie Smith, and Dasan Ahanu. Please put your hands together for this amazing panel. We want to give special thanks.
Here I am.
I'm here. I am. Thank you. We want to give special thanks to the City of Raleigh Museum, Mike Williams, Ernest. We truly appreciate you for putting this incredible panel together and this day celebrating hip hop. This is just one of the events. This is the kickoff to the day. There's a block party that's going to be going on. There's a sneaker ball a little bit later. We have people that are going to be honored, incredible old school, new school artists and DJs for this entire day. So please, if you're downtown, take a moment to celebrate hip hop. This is what it's all about. This is the culture that brought us all together in here. And please just give it up one more time for yourselves for being here today. Give it up for hip hop. Hey, can I get a hip hop? Let me get a hip hop. Hey, we thank you so much. Please circulate. Have a good time. We celebrating Hip Hop 50.